Thank you. So, blockchain for higher purpose. Lori, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing as the managing director of e-residency in Estonia?
Yeah, so I'm leading up e-residency program of Estonia. That lets every one of you become like a digital citizen of Estonia if you want to, because that gives you access to all the digital services that we have. And usually that's kind of the hard thing with digital services. You don't see them, you can't take a picture of them, you can't show them to other people. So we created a program some 7-8 years ago, which allows everybody in the world to become an e-Estonian. And almost 100,000 people have done so, and they are from 179 countries. So it's almost like a United Nations minus North Korea, and so very popular.
Okay, that's great. That's great. I might introduce myself too. I'm Ricardo La Torre. I work at 7R. Here at 7R, what we do is we create new businesses together with our corporate partners. We do this by identifying strategic opportunities and leveraging on their unfair advantages as a corporations. We've been exploring this crypto and Web3 opportunity for quite some years now. And we think blockchain as a technology is something that we should implement in our new businesses, probably now and in the future. More so by working not only with corporates, but with what will be the corporates of the future, the DAOs. Have you had some experience with the corporation world, the DAOs and things like that there in the Estonian government?
Yeah, well, coming back to the blockchain for higher purpose idea, so somehow when people say blockchain, they immediately think Bitcoin or Luna or Ethereum or something like that. And actually the Bitcoin memorandum came out, 2008, late October. And the Estonian government was already using blockchain technologies in government services before that. So it's like, it's actually an old technology. There's nothing super new about it. It's just that it has gotten more headlines lately or in the last few years. But it doesn't have to be about cryptocurrencies or virtual assets. I mean, blockchain as a technology can be and is used actually in a very number of different ways. So for example, we started off with a business registry, also land registry, succession registry, digital health, these kind of topics, because if you think of like, if you need a service where you have to be absolutely sure that the data is correct and is traceable, the changes are traceable, and the whole thing is set up in a secure way, then actually this is a pretty good technology.
Yeah, so what all the use cases can benefit from this burden of proof beyond all this financial wave that is coming from the blockchain side? What like, for example, in terms of sustainability, things like energy management, things like I don't know, logistics. What kind of things do you think could be benefited from adopting blockchain?
Well, definitely the things that you mentioned, but also maybe going back to the topic of DAOs or the distributed autonomous organizations. So these again seem like a new thing, like Bitcoin blockchain analogy, but then you think about what the DAO is, and it's kind of like a cooperative. And in most countries you have had cooperatives for tens of years. And if you go back maybe to the medieval times, then you have syndicates. So people from Spain, they were syndicating together to finance a ship or finance a field or something.
Managing forests in the north. Yeah.
Exactly. So actually these are old concepts in many ways, but of course the new technology allows it to scale and allows it to be global.
So we could say that probably the worst thing about blockchain now is the blockchain world itself, right? So the blockchain has to be bought in again, has to be seen as just a technology that leverages and that enables new business models or new models, not only for business but also from the public affairs, right?
Yeah, from the public affairs, I think it's really like you want to make sure that your public data is correct and it has not been meddled with, that nobody has changed anything without your knowing. So anything that enables that is actually like a pretty good tool to use. And it doesn't have to be about virtual assets all the time. So.
And then, in your experience with blockchain, what are like the main, the main incentives or the incentives that have to have, for example, a government or a public entity in order to implement blockchain right, but also in order to get mass adoption from in this case, the citizenship or?
Well, the mass adoption thing actually is a really, really important point. And then for us, the mass adoption thing already became with a strong digital identity which we already have been using and implementing since, oh my God. Actually, it's the 20th anniversary of the first qualified electronic signature in Estonia. So it's like 20 years ago. So it's actually kind of old. But then, of course, when blockchain came along, it does many things really well. One thing which is a bit problematic is KYC, right? Because you can identify the wallet behind the transaction, but who's behind the wallet? And since we have been doing the strong digital identity for almost 20 years, when you put these two things together, then kind of magic happens. But the mass adoption was actually based more around the digital identity side. Because again, like government service, what happens in the background, what is the production system used, should we know, should we care?
We're coming back again to the use cases, not the technology, right?
Yes, so exactly.
And what were the main barriers that you faced when you were building on this technology and not, comparing to some other technologies like centralized database, which is essentially like the alternative to the...
I suppose still, yeah, the adoption part is still the main thing. How to make people apply. We had a clever trick with our digital identity thing. We made it compulsory, so you could not have another way. And over some time, something that was like a niche thing, like a starting thing, became the norm, and the paper side became the niche thing. So, but it took some time, of course. Yeah.
So, from our side, what we see is working with DAOs or new entities in this new blockchain ecosystem, it's quite often difficult because how do you invoice them? How do you work with them? How do you have like a legal relationship with them in terms of work and in terms of any kind of activity that you can have? How do you see that from the government side? How do you tax them? How do you, all this kind of boring stuff that people do with the economic activities?
I think many countries will be facing kind of similar, let's say, difficulties incorporating the concept of a DAO and the concept of this kind of autonomous organization into their business code, but also into their tax code. And my thinking is that maybe the business code is actually easier side. It's a question of deciding who manages what and how and based on what kind of authority. But what is more complicated is the tax side. So let's say countries vary, like if you have a scale, let's say on one end you have territorial tax systems, and the other hand you have global tax systems, and then countries kind of go on that kind of timeline basically. So like if you have a country with a global tax system and also the business code doesn't quite fit, then I think the problem is too difficult. You probably will not be the first ones to solve it. But even if you can change your business code to somehow adopt the DAO thing, you still need to consider the taxation implications, which is not an easy one, to be honest.
So in terms of the higher purpose, like the title of the talk, in terms of sustainability, what are your thoughts on implementing blockchain, on sustainability things, on the burden of proof that you mentioned before?
I think on the sustainability part, there's always also the question of like, first of all, is it like the energy use itself by these kind of systems, right? So if you talk about blockchain for virtual assets, then you have potentially huge implications on energy use. But then again, the moment you turn this around and you say, okay, but I'm going to use this technology for a government service, then of course, like if you do crypto trading, you have like millions of transactions per second. But if you use blockchain for, let's say, a land registry, I mean, you're not going to buy and sell a plot of land every second. Like even in a big country, you don't have the number of transactions is not so high. So there, the whole kind of energy use part of this technology is not such a big issue, to be honest. Yeah, so that's kind of one angle of it. The technology itself, how much energy does this use? Because if you have a public blockchain and it's on millions of nodes, I mean, it gets pretty crazy pretty quickly. Yeah? But yeah, on the sustainability side, I think there are some really, really interesting things coming up where you have this kind of tokenized carbon credits and these kind of things. So,
well, we have a big audience here. Some of you, I think, are corporate. Some of you are probably startups. Some of you are students. What would you say to, for example, a startup that is building a new business and that can see a blockchain as something maybe fluffy or foggy or things like that? And what would you say to them? That is it an opportunity now to build something on blockchain for going beyond the technology?
Well, definitely, there's a lot of opportunity building, but good luck getting some developers for that as well, because it's really, really hot field at the moment. And the other thing I would be, let's say, I wouldn't don't want to use the word caution, but just to be aware of the regulatory side of things, because the moment something starts to look like a financial technology or like financial transactions embedded, maybe you are thinking, oh, I have this gamification platform, I'm going to tokenize some magical swords and whatnot, and suddenly you start selling those for hard currency and you are a financial service. So, be aware of that, and different countries regulate this differently. Many countries don't have any regulation at all. Then usually the saying goes like, even bad regulation is better than no regulation. It wasn't my quote, but I kind of like it. So be aware of that a little bit. Like even if you think your business model is not the financial service, but just think it through, that maybe it can be considered a financial service, and think it through basically. Get some advice beyond the technology, like to be aware, because it can really increase your cost and shorten your runway quite dramatically if you realize that, oh, actually I'm a financial service, I need to get a regulatory approval, okay, which country am I going to go for this, and how much money it will actually cost you to do all that part of the business. So just be aware of that.
It is true that if you are building a business in some kind of regulatory fence that is quite difficult to build, there are some issues that you have to take into account, but nowadays, with the increase of no-code tools and things like that are already incorporating blockchain and crypto and Web3 capabilities, it's probably easier than ever to build a new business that has nothing to do with regulation or which is loosely regulated or something like that. I would say that it is now probably the time to start thinking about blockchain without having this financial burden of having to hire really deep knowledge coders in the blockchain side.
But actually here comes the problem, right? Because I don't know, I can't say all regulators in the world, but many regulators in the world immediately connect blockchain in their head with cryptocurrencies, and then say, okay, we need to regulate it somehow.
That's an issue.
Exactly, right? So that's how they will be looking at this, right? So they are made quite uneasy about how things have developed, maybe in the beginning. So there is this element of, let's say, regulatory risk, if we want to put it this way, for a starting business. You working with corporates, I suppose they have deeper pockets and more lawyers, so they can think it through. But how is it on the corporate side?
That's true. Within the corporate side, what we see is that they have blockchain as some kind of, they see an issue in their head because they've been exploring with blockchain for quite some years now, but they've been doing this as an exploratory thing, always confined within the technology itself. They've been doing proof of concepts, they've been doing different prototypes of working with the technology within the innovation side or within the technology side, but they haven't been experiencing blockchain like from the boring stuff that you put in the technology layer, and then you build a business on top of that. So from the corporate side, we see that they are now trying to understand how blockchain can be this new, not new, this technology that can enable new different kind of businesses, but it's not really a regulatory issue in itself if you just use the technology and get the advantages of the technology without the disadvantages of the technology itself.
So in some ways the future is already here, but it's a bit unevenly distributed. So the technology is there, people are already using it, but we haven't quite seen the sort of real life implications that are totally have a global impact outside of the cryptocurrencies. But I'm kind of thinking about this as an evolution, like maybe not too dissimilar from like we had paper letters we were sending each other. Then at some point fax was created, but fax and paper mail they're kind of like similar. And then you have email, which gives you a totally different level of use cases. And I'm thinking about blockchain in a similar way, that we have seen something, and now the actual sort of innovation, the actual use cases from the real world are just about to be developing and blossoming, really.
And talking about the future, how do you see blockchain is going to evolve in the future from your side, from the government or the public affairs sector?
From the government side, I think it's government is generally a boring thing, right? To manage stuff, keep registries, keep the public data flowing, and so there, in that sense, it's just a question of what is the best technology to give you a secure, safe, traceable system. So this is one of the technologies now. I'm thinking in the future there will be something else.
From our side, what we see from the corporations is that they will increasingly adopt this blockchain technology as something that is already voting, as you say. They will start probably to build on top of that new businesses and things like that, and we will start seeing some of these corporations that probably not the usual corporation that we have nowadays, but we will see how DAOs are evolving into regular businesses. People just getting together with a common purpose of selling a product, a service to someone else, but with the implication that they are doing it in some kind of way that is different from different and not different, because as you said, it comes from medieval times, people working together towards a common goal.
Yeah, one thing that I see, it's already here, but it's also super interesting, is kind of tokenization of ownership. So, for example, you start a new business, you have maybe a two-way marketplace, you need sellers, you need buyers, and you want to incentivize them to come onto your platform. So rather than trying to incentivize them with Facebook ads or Instagram ads, perhaps it's a better way of getting them to become your shareholders, but on a micro level. So how do you manage that? But it would be great if maybe Uber, when they started, can you imagine, the first 10,000 drivers and the first 100,000 riders, if they would have been the micro shareholders of Uber, I think they would be pretty happy, and also the growth trajectory might have been pretty steep as well.
Yeah, exactly. So,
sorry. I think
we have some minutes left, I guess.
Yes.
So we would like to know if you have any questions, or we want to open up this corner to someone that might have some questions here. Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for this. Was very interesting. The question is more about the last comments. So you say that in the future, probably companies will apply blockchain in a more active way. Okay. The thing is, we're talking general companies, but how will they apply it? More regarding traceability, cryptocurrency. Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So my thinking here is that they will be applying it, but we won't notice it. They will be applying blockchain as another technology, as they are using now, or they are adopting now cloud computing or cloud technologies, or AWS for supporting all their business process, for example. But they will do this in a way that you won't notice, because for you it's just another thing that they are doing in order to give you the product or service, and giving it to you for them to be more efficient. Okay, so they will be implementing probably in the back office side of things. Some of these things will touch you, like for example, offering you some kind of loyalty programs, for example, will be implemented with blockchain. But I think that they will be implementing with having in mind that this is just a technology, as they implemented Oracle in the 90s, or as they are implementing now, for example, cloud technologies.
So in other words, the more boring, the better.
The more boring, the better, exactly. We have to make blockchain boring again,
That's a higher purpose.
Es importante.
Hola. Hi, thank you for the pitch. We are a blockchain company, startup. We are based in Spain. We was founded in 2018, and we do provide services based in blockchain, but out of the cryptocurrency world. We applied the blockchain solutions from the industry. We are also considering, we have been checking out to go to Estonia, because it's an example in the world of how they are applying blockchain out of the cryptocurrency world. My question is, we do offer solution with blockchain and IoT. We are integrating blockchain in any IoT devices. And how is in Estonia this technology about the industry? Because here in Spain, it's no mature, it's very intangible, and it's very hard to sell these solutions to companies. Actually, we are now in the finalists in the 5.0 industry, and I was asking the other day, if we are not still developed in the 4.0, how hard is to sell 5.0 industry solution, and how Estonia is doing it based in blockchain, artificial intelligence, and IoT world in the industry. Thank you.
So first of all, Estonia, of course, the industry side is not a very big part of the business, to be honest, right? So that's maybe for historical reasons or not. So probably there are not so many good examples yet to actually share in that field. But the whole concept of Industry 4.0, which hasn't quite kind of taken off yet, and now we're already talking about how to implement tokenization and other kind of things in industry, of course, is a really, really hard sell. And I think it kind of boils down to maybe not the actual sort of industry itself, but like the level of conservatism, right? So like you tend to have the situation where people who want to try new things and they want to iterate and build and move fast and break things, they tend to be more on the software side. And this industry is more on the hardware side. So they're, by nature more conservative. And also, it's a bit more difficult to iterate in industry, right? So you build something physical, if it doesn't work, taking it back to the shop and rebuilding it, it's not like releasing a new line of code and committing it to the, to your production system, right? So I think in some ways, it's kind of like nature of the beast that the industry is more conservative. That there is probably, and Spanish industry no different than another other industry because of this. So I'm afraid that it's a hard struggle, but I root for you.